Oral questions. Questions orales. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Here we go, folks.
So ashamed of his own economic update that he wants to avoid talking about it for the week that follows. So we can understand why. Next year, he wants to spend $53 billion on debt interest, a record-smashing amount that is higher than the amount we spend on health care. Works out to $3,000 for every Canadian family. According to according to the Bank of Nova Scotia, this is going to increase interest rates by 2 full percentage points, or $700 a year, directly attributable to this government's deficit spending. So will he get a control of himself and control of his spending so Canadians can get control of their mortgage costs?
Mr. Speaker, I will admit openly to you and to others in this House that the media didn't cover our fall economic statement as much as we would have liked last week, because they were so busy talking about what a terrible week the Conservative Party had on Ukraine, on allegations of terrorism, on attacks on Atlantis and jobs in Southern Ontario. Yes, the media were totally wrapped up in the Leader of the Opposition's terrible week.
Did I miss something?
Focused on investing in housing for Canadians, on stepping up on more competition to helping grocery prices, and moving forward and creating great jobs and careers for Canadians for decades to come.
I haven't seen any backlash towards the Conservatives, so I'm not sure what he's talking about.
Opposition. Well, maybe he should just give the media even more money to cover the news how he'd like it, Mr. Speaker, because we know he's so desperate to debate me on the carbon tax, a debate he's been losing badly. Canadians overwhelmingly want him to axe the tax. That's why he panicked and flip-flopped to take the tax off for a short time, and only for those people who are in a region where he's plummeting in the polls and his caucus is revolting. With 2 million Canadians forced to go to a food bank, will he stop thinking about buying himself better news coverage and start thinking about the Canadians who have to buy themselves better food?
There you go.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting to hear the Conservative leader again attacking the media, particularly on a day where we stood up and arranged a deal with Google to make sure that local journalism, that independent journalism, that the work that our news media is going to do is going to be able to stand the test of time through this transforming times we live in. The Leader of the Opposition continues to want to stand with big data, with internet giants, to sidle up to his billionaire buddies down south. We're going to continue to stand up for local journalism, for the work that professionals do to support our democracy in small towns and communities right across the country.
This guy has lost his mind.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
On the carbon tax, because he knows that Canadians know they can't afford the cost of food, as he intends to continue raising taxes. And so instead, he tries to distract with media buyouts and by censoring views with which he disagrees. So will he have the courage to actually defend his carbon tax as 2 million people line up in bread lines like those we haven't seen since the Great Depression? And will he support our common sense bill to axe the tax on the farmers that feed us?
Yeah. Do what needs to be done, Trudeau. Drop your ego.
Speaker, Canadians right across the country, including and especially our hardworking farm families, are seeing the impact of climate change increasingly every single year. It has become glaringly obvious to everyone, except for certain MAGA conservatives, that the fight against is a fight for the
That's
of our economy.
Interesting accusation.
We cannot separate fighting climate change from growing good jobs and a strong economy into the future. And yet, that is exactly what the Conservatives continue to say. We put a price on pollution, we're putting more money back in Canadians' pockets, and we're creating great jobs for the long term.
The Prime Minister loves to blame others for the fact that he's doubled housing costs in 8 years. He's not worth the price of rent. But let me quote the organization Realtor.com in the United States. October 23rd marks the 6th month in a row of year-over-year rent declines. Rental.ca in Canada says, and I quote, for the 6th month in a row, asking rents in Canada hit a new high. Why, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, is rent going down in the States and up in Canada?
Because of a Liberal government.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, we have been investing in housing in this country to make up for the 10 years of lost time when that member as Minister of Housing and a previous government got out of the business of building and supporting housing across this country. So we've done an awful lot, and we recognize there's more to do, which is why part of our fall economic statement was about investing even more in creating homes and unlocking the potential of this country. As for the difference between Canada and the United States, well, one of the differences is our population is growing much faster than the population growth in the United States. But I'm certain the Leader of the Opposition wasn't about to suggest he was anti-immigration, because we all know immigration creates jobs and prosperity, and that's what we're all for.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's the Prime Minister who brought up immigration. I was about to point out that in Canada, according to his housing agency,
here we go.
Home construction is down 32% year over year. And in the United States, it's up 5%. It is true the Prime Minister has much more expensive federal government programs to build more government bureaucracy and less homes. Will he adopt our common sense plan to build homes, not just bureaucracy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we all know the mistrust and the distaste the Leader of the Opposition has for expert analysis and expert advice. That's particularly because the experts have roundly panned his approach on housing as not going to be able to create the housing that Canada needs. What are we doing? For example, concretely, we've talked about 9,000 housing units in Hamilton, 7,000 housing units in London, 44,000 housing units in Vaughan, 9,000 housing units in Halifax, and more to be created over the next few years. These are investments we're making that are delivering for Canadians right across the country, while he continues to propose cuts and austerity instead of the investments that Canadians need.
Hear, hear.
L'Honorable Chef de l'Opposition.
Gives home building numbers. He's talking about promises that have not been realized. For example, he promised in 2015, 8 years ago, that he would sell federal lands to build homes. Now, today, Radio Canada reports that it takes 23 years for the government to dispose of lands and turn it into new homes. In fact, one project won't be done until the year 2038. How many generations of Canadians would have to survive long enough for the Prime Minister to realize any of the promises that he makes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that underscores the importance of being able to work constructively with municipalities to build those housings. And those numbers from the City of Ottawa are something that we're concerned with and are going to be working to make sure that they accelerate the construction of housing on federal lands. We are there for investing in more housing. We are there to release federal lands for the construction of housing. But instead of doing what the Leader of the Opposition says and picking fights with the municipalities, we will work with them to ensure that they are building faster. That's what our Housing Accelerator is all about, unlocking hundreds of thousands of new homes over the coming years.
Hear, hear.
L'Honorable Chef de l'Opposition.
What he's actually done is unlock hundreds of new photo ops at the expense of Canadian taxpayers. So, for example, he's now given $15 billion to the renamed and recycled construction loan program. This is a program that has built less than half of its targeted promises, and the new money that he says will build homes will arrive in 2025. The new homes in 2028. Wow. Mr. Speaker, how many times would this Prime Minister have to be re-elected on his promises for housing for a new home to actually get built?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the irony is the Leader of the Opposition is attacking us for making announcements on thousands upon thousands of new units built across the country when he doesn't make any announcements investments at all because he has no plan. He is not sharing a plan to build more homes. He's not sharing a plan to invest in the economy. He is not sharing his approach on how to create more opportunities for Canadians while fighting climate change, while responding to the climate crisis. He just stands there and makes personal attacks and sneers at everything and says it's all broken instead of doing the hard work, rolling up our sleeves and delivering a real plan for the future of Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The problem is with this Prime Minister, the future never comes. It's a promise that's always just around the corner. For example, his $4 billion housing accelerator has completed exactly 0 homes 2 years after it was announced. And here's why. The other day he announced a bunch of money in Halifax. And where did the money go, according to the city? To hire 29 new bureaucrats. Wow. The same bureaucrats that are blocking the housing construction in the first place. Why doesn't he accept my common sense plan to require cities boost housing completions by 15% in order to get federal money so that we build homes, not bureaucracies?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I hate to break it to the Leader of the Opposition, but a TikTok video is not a plan. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to work, to roll up our sleeves and deliver for Canadians every step of the way. While the Conservatives are flip-flopping all over the place, refusing...
Wow, you think the Conservatives are flip-flopping?
Watching too much far-right American TV, we're going to stay focused on delivering concretely for Canadians with the lowest debt in the G7, the best debt-to-GDP ratio in the G7, the best AAA credit rating of all countries.
There it is.
Except for the top 3.
AAA credit rating.
We're going to continue delivering for Canadians.
Reminder, folks, if you haven't yet, smash that like button. Let's try and get to like 600 or 700 if we can.
Let me be the first of the season to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Oh, there you go, buddy. By the way, it's my birthday on Christmas, for those who didn't know that.
What a beautiful celebration Christmas is.
Including Christmas, Mr. Speaker. But unfortunately, after 8 years, this Prime Minister promises nothing but a carbon-taxed lump of coal for Canadians, really get off the backs of Canadians so that they can enjoy beautiful gifts, maybe even a turkey and a warm meal around the Christmas table this season.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to point out that we're the government that's phasing out coal, Mr. Speaker, over the opposition of the Leader of the Opposition. We're going to continue to build a better and brighter future for all Canadians, and that includes fighting against climate change so we can ensure that we keep a stronger future for Canadian children to be able to go sledding, but also so that we can make sure that they have better jobs into the future. The climate denialism of the Conservative Party of Canada is putting future white Christmases at risk, and that's why on this side of the House we stand for Christmas.
It's also Trudeau's birthday on Christmas. Oh, no. Anybody but him.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that has to be the angriest and most caustic Christmas message I've ever seen. This is a guy, he hasn't phased out coal despite his theatrics over there, Mr. Speaker. What he's doing is phasing out food because Canadians can't afford it now as he raises carbon taxes on the wonderful farmers that bring it to our table. Why won't he axe the tax on farmers so that Canadians can eat, heat, and house themselves? And why doesn't he be a little less like Scrooge and a little more like Santa Claus?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one of the issues we have is when he talks about the impact of our price on pollution on farmers, he includes farmers in Ukraine. He includes farmers farmers who are busy feeding us and feeding people around the world. He has stood against the free trade deal that Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian people want us to have because he pretends we're imposing a price on pollution on them, which of course we are not. But that is the extent to which he will spin up to make a political attack when it is completely unfounded. We will be there to stand with Ukraine and with Christmas, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can't even have a little bit of fun in this place, Mr. Speaker, because of course once he's off script, that's when he starts rambling all over the map, unable to stay on any subject possible. The question was about the cost of food, after he's forced Canadians to line up in bread lines that we have not seen since the Great Depression. 2 million, a record-smashing 2 million visits to a food bank. And now he sees it as the time to quadruple the tax on the farmers that feed us. Will he stop blocking common sense Conservative Bill C2, 3, 4 to take the tax off the farmers so that Canadians can afford Christmas?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
97% of farm fuel emissions are already exempt from our price on pollution. That is what the Leader of the Opposition refuses to accept. There are many factors that go into the rise in food prices, not just in Canada and around the world, and the war in Ukraine is certainly one of them. So the fact that they have not chosen to stand with Ukraine against Russia in this difficult time is very much relevant, no matter how much they try to dodge and spin out of it. They're not standing with Ukraine at this difficult time.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This Prime Minister would like Canadians to think about anything other than their hungry stomachs after 8 years in office. He would like Canadians to forget that he has doubled the cost of rent, that he wants to quadruple the carbon tax, that he's given us the worst interest rate hikes in Canadian history. The least he could do is back off on his plan to quadruple the tax on our farmers. So, will he stop blocking Bill C-234, the common sense Conservative bill to take the tax off our farmers so that our Canadian people can afford to eat?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that might be a little more of a credible question if it hadn't been for the fact that the Conservative Party delayed implementation of our Affordability Act that brought in more competition on groceries, that is moving forward to stabilize grocery prices and support Canadians through this difficult time. They've also stood against other initiatives we're supporting Canadians with, like dental care for young Canadians, but also for seniors as is coming in the coming months. They've stood against supports like our grocery rebate. They've stood against the investments that we're busy making to support Canadians right across the country because they stand for austerity and cuts.
That's right.